I'd like to now introduce our final speaker for our closing plenary. Jesse Milan is President and CEO of AIDS United, a national organization focused on policy, grant-making, and capacity building. AIDS United has granted over $120 million over 30 years, and its Public Policy Council organizations and current grantees number over 300 in more than 40 states and territories. Mr. Milan is a lawyer whose career includes leading HIV programs and organizations at national, regional, and global levels. He has chaired 5 nonprofit boards, including the Black AIDS Institute. He was AIDS director for Philadelphia. He's chaired federal advisory committees and currently serves on the Scientific Advisory Board for PEPFAR, the Funders Concerned About AIDS Board, and the Infectious Disease Board of the American Board of Internal Medicine. Jesse has received numerous honors for his work in HIV and has addressed millions globally. He's a graduate of Princeton University and the NYU School of Law. Jesse has been living with HIV for over 3 decades and celebrated recently 30 years of commitment with his husband. Jesse?
Wow. Thank you so much, Heather. It is always an honor to be partnered with the Ryan White Program and HRSA. And Dr. Gerard, thank you for that shout out. And we know that you are working hard on COVID testing. But for me, it's a special privilege to follow Jeannie White Ginder. So I want to start by giving honor to her son and to her. Ryan is our hero, and his mom is our shero. Over these last few days, we've all been celebrating virtually all that the Ryan White Program has accomplished these past 30 years. But in my time, I want to focus today on both the 30 years of his personal story that we heard so much about from his mom, and the 30 years of this public health program and its success. Because the Ryan White story is one we should celebrate specifically because Ryan's personal story still resonates. And I think it still guides and inspires us on both a personal level and a public level today. You heard Ryan's story of being a young man with a disease who fought the system and systemic stigma, and who died with dignity and earning great respect of presidents and celebrities and public health leaders and advocates alike. It's a great story. And his legacy is certainly the Ryan White legislation that has enduring support across both sides of the aisle and has literally countless outcomes and impacts across 3 decades and across all states and territories and across races and genders and ethnicities. Impacts and outcomes across 30 years and literally millions of lives. But I say that Ryan's story is a personal story and a public story because it's about what he wanted for himself, but also what he helped spark for public policy, but never lived to see, and also a story about what's left to be achieved for us personally and as the public. So the Ryan White story has 3-fold meaning for us. First, what did Ryan hope to achieve in his life that was just and only for him? And what do you hope for your own life that you can say is only and just for you? Second, the public policy and public health story. What the program named for Ryan has helped achieve in jurisdictions and grantees across these 30 years, and what the Ryan White Program has made possible for you and for me to work for, to advocate for, and to live to see. For all of you who are younger than 30, you've seen and helped work for so much change that Ryan did not live to see or do. You're part of a story of public health and public policy change that's still happening today. And then third, what work must be done that this program named for that young hero needs to be done, must be done for justice, for resilience, and for hope. What must be done by you and me today? I'd like to start with the personal. But the personal is not an easy or likely place to start when we come together in events like this as a people, as the HIV community, because when we do, we so often speak about the big things, the national problems, the politics, the policies, and the statistics. And this year, they are huge. Systemic racism and white supremacy, transphobia, economic disaster, and COVID-19 and whether we're flattening the curve. These are big issues that the Ryan White community is facing and fighting for each of us as persons and for all of us as the public. And we dare not stop fighting because our lives and our liberties are at stake. But in the midst of all this struggle, an election and the pandemic and the news, and especially while we're all in isolation and lockdown, let's not lose sight of ourselves, the you and the me. It's still important to remember the things that are only and just about you. And I think that's the first lesson from Ryan. The personal lesson for us that even as Ryan was a national figure of the tragedy of AIDS and the intense focus of political and community fighting in school boards and on TV, Ryan stayed true to being just a kid, just a young person. He had dreams and hopes for his young life that were just and only about him. And the story of his personal life is not that he wanted a piece of legislation to bear his name that's valued today at $2.5 billion and that saves hundreds of thousands of lives every year. That's amazing history. No, his story started with him just wanting to be a normal kid, to go to school like other kids, to go to the prom and graduate with his class. Those dreams changed when he was diagnosed with AIDS at age 13. And like for Ryan, the goal of achieving the hopes you had for yourself probably changed the day you received your diagnosis. I know that is true for me. If you thought about all the things that you might not get to do, I'm here to tell you that you were not alone. When I was diagnosed, I certainly had dreams about the work I might do and the positions I might hold and the places I might see, but those were not the dreams that mattered most to me. What mattered most was I wanted to be there to see my baby sister get married. I wanted to be there if she had children. And it saddened me to think that I might not. If your personal hopes and dreams changed the day of your diagnosis, I hope they changed the day you entered a Ryan White program or when you started treatment and support like me. The hope that I might actually be around for a long time became more and more real with each passing CD4 count and each viral load test. And I finally got the memo that I might just be around. And my birthday was 2 weeks ago today. I'm not going to tell you whether my age still starts with a 4 or a 5, but let's just say that I feel like I'm the poster child for HIV and aging. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's the hope. That's the hope that our national investment in the Ryan White program makes possible for thousands like you and me every day. The possibility of giving us health and strength and time, the beautiful gift of the length of a normal lifetime, time to realize your most personal dreams, the secret goals that you hold just and only for you, the things you want to do, to see, to be, and maybe even more importantly, the things you hope to give, to receive, to share. That's what the Ryan White program makes possible. And it gives us the chance to enjoy some surprises along the way. I know I was surprised when I was asked to give this speech. I spoke in this position as the final speaker for the 20th anniversary of the Ryan White program 10 years ago. My husband, when he heard that I was invited to speak to you again, his response was, "Why are they dredging you up again?" That's the kind of thing that only a husband or a wife can get away with. And marriage may be the subject of another conference. But it is one of the great surprises of my life, because I never thought I'd get to see the day when I could legally call someone my husband. But now I can in all 50 states. And the trajectory of policy change in these last 10 years since the 20th anniversary of the Ryan White program, it has included historic milestones I'm glad we've helped to work for and live to see. And we are still working hard today to actualize historic liberties that have never been fully known by our people. And we're working hard to establish new rights that are needed right now. When I spoke to you 10 years ago, same-sex marriage was still a dream. We worked and advocated for it. But this year, last month, our Supreme Court ruled in our favor and declared that LGBTQ people have a right to not be discriminated at work. The medications and the support of the Ryan White program has given us the health, the strength, and the drive to not only see, but to advocate year after year for those changes that make our lives more equal and more whole. But we are far from whole. Last week, the President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS voted to request that the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Health and Human Services use the Supreme Court's new definition of sex discrimination that now includes us and apply it to healthcare institutions. And PACHA requested that the department not move forward with implementing its rule change to the Affordable Care Act that would in practice sanction discrimination against LGBTQ people. That's us. That change is slated to go into effect on Tuesday. Yes, the protections of the Affordable Care Act are important parts of our history. The Affordable Care Act did not exist until 10 years ago, but it was enacted in the 20th year of the Ryan White program. But its protections for pre-existing conditions are rooted in our experience and in our advocacy over nearly 4 decades since HIV came into this world. And I'm glad for the health and the strength we've had to advocate for that law and to live to see it become real. Because the Ryan White program is a model of what healthcare should be in this country, offering healthcare that helps assure our personal health and the public's health at the same time. And it provides us the health and the strength and the inspiration to advocate for the preservation of the Affordable Care Act and for its expansion of Medicaid so that more people in more states can have healthcare too. Just last week, Missouri, the state of the infamous Missouri Compromise, where the legacy of slavery was lived out in a shooting in Ferguson, last week voted to expand Medicaid. There are legions, including Ryan, who never lived to work for or to see that change happen. But we have, and we still have more to do. The National AIDS Strategy did not exist until 10 years ago. It was released in the 20th year of the Ryan White program. We celebrated its 10th anniversary this summer. Its vision of a world where new infections are rare and where stigma and discrimination stop still resonates with us a year later. And we created a community roadmap supported by 250 organizations, many of whom are Ryan White grantees and subgrantees, a roadmap for how our federal government might finally end this epidemic. And now, the Ending the HIV Epidemic, a Plan for America that Admiral Gerard described so well, is an initiative that is galvanizing our community. But it did not exist until barely 2 years ago. But its goals for 10 years from now for 2030 are goals that the Ryan White program is central to helping our nation achieve. And our voices are needed to actualize the vision of that national strategy and the goals of the Ending the Epidemic plan. The Ryan White program provides a structure for our voices to be at the table and to demand accountability and inclusion in not only the jurisdictions of the Ending the Epidemic plan, but in every jurisdiction. Advocacy, accountability, outcomes, and meaningful inclusion of people living with HIV are lessons and legacies of young Ryan White and of the program that bears his name. But the role of the Affordable Care Act and the vision of the national strategy and the goals of the Ending the Epidemic plan are now all being impacted by COVID-19. Was this pandemic something that any of us wanted to live to see? No. But is it something we want to live to see end? Yes. And the Ryan White program may, for many of us, be the key. Achieving viral suppression means that we may not be any more vulnerable to COVID-19 than anyone else who is healthy. And 87% of Ryan White clients are virally suppressed. Oh, that's a cause for celebration, and I hope Ryan is smiling on that fact. But national measures about viral suppression were not in our consciousness 10 years ago. It was in the 21st year of the Ryan White program, in 2011, that the Gardner Cascade was published in a journal. It's now, of course, as we all know, the HIV treatment cascade, a model and a framework that every Ending the Epidemic jurisdiction is replicating, working for, and citing. And of course, it has a sister that Tony Fauci calls the prevention cascade, but that might be the subject of another conference too. But over these ensuing years, we've all become familiar with flattening our HIV curve. From the number of people living with HIV, to those who know their status, those who are in care, and those who are virally suppressed. And we've heard from Admiral Giroir that soon we'll have a dashboard on how we're doing across all of our many jurisdictions. Over the years, I've given talks like this, and I've talked about how the number of virally suppressed was less than 30%, then 40, then barely 50, and now 65% nationally. And our national numbers of viral suppression increase year after year because of the achievements of the Ryan White program. Thank you, Ryan White. And within these past few years, we've learned what viral suppression means, not only for our public lives, but also for our individual personal lives. Did you have the goal not only that you would stay healthy and see 50 and 60 or 70 or 80, but that you would never pass this virus on to someone else? I did. U equal U is transforming our lives. It certainly transformed my life. And my husband and I have been together for 32 years next month, and he is still negative. If treatments make it possible for us to live to achieve our dreams, U equal U makes it possible for us to enjoy the ride by having sexually fulfilling lives without fear, without internal stigma and shame. And the Ryan White program is offering that possibility to people every day. But today, we are aware of what work is before us. Not everyone is virally suppressed. Not everyone is able to stay consistently in care, especially when we're facing lockdowns and isolation. And we know what our advocacy must do to get the resources that is needed to maintain and enhance our public health infrastructure in this COVID-19 world, and what we must do to get the resources we need for ending this epidemic so that more people are virally suppressed and no new infections, no more deaths, or no more diagnoses of AIDS ever occur. And you know also what our work before us is, to continue and creating and doing not only what is needed, but to create and do what is right. I think the personal and public lesson from young Ryan White is that he said to the world, I'm a person with HIV and my life matters. We spent a decade before Ryan died and all the 3 decades since proclaiming to the world that the lives of people with HIV and AIDS matter. And now, 30 years later, I wonder, would that 18-year-old white kid named Ryan White, were he here today, would he be in the streets to say Black Lives Matter? If he lived 30 more years and were 48 years old today, would he be voting to say that trans lives matter? Out of respect for his mother, I won't speculate on what Ryan would do if he were here today, but out of encouragement from what he did do, we can be emboldened to do and say what we know is needed today. And that is this: not just to live to make our private goals come true, and not just to sit and see the news of change on TV and say, I'm glad I lived to see that, but to make the change happen that you believe needs to happen, and to make it happen before we are gone too. George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, John Lewis and Ryan White, and civil rights marchers and ACT UP protesters, and those who could vote and those who could not, those who were enslaved and those who have immigrated, and those who died and those who cried in the 80s and the 90s need us to help make their dreams come true. We have health. We have strength, and together we are a powerful community. We have hopes and goals for ourselves and for our people, goals for 2030, and goals for you who are not yet 30, and goals for us who are twice that. Let me tell you that in July, my sister celebrated her 22nd wedding anniversary. And in June, her daughter graduated from high school. When my baby sister graduated from high school, I gave her a set of earrings that she wore at her wedding. I gave an identical set to my niece when she graduated in June. Are all my personal hopes and dreams now done? No. Are yours? If you just started your treatment, if you just enrolled in a Ryan White program, if you just started your job in a Ryan White program, your story has just begun. I have hopes for our national life and for the lives of all of us in the Ryan White community. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I can tell you this: the medications, the support, and the services of the Ryan White program make health and strength and a powerful and inclusive community for you, for me, and for us all. Together, we are stronger than 30 years ago, and we will be even stronger when 2030 is here. In his short life, Ryan wasted no time to achieve his personal goals. He got to school, he got to the prom, and he got to drive a car. And in fighting for the right to do so, he set the course for his story, for our stories, and for our HIV history to change. If ever there was a legacy for us to live up to, it is that. We have inequities to correct. We have to break down, liberties to protect, and rights yet to gain. We have people in need of medications, people in need of services, and people in need of hope. And we have dreams for ourselves and for our people to achieve. When we look back 10 years from now, let's say we did them all. And then let's get ready to do even more. So thank you. Thank you for all you do. And may the Ryan White program continue until this epidemic ends. patients.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for your inspiring words as we close out the conference. I think our plenary participants this afternoon will agree that Laura and I knew what we were doing when we asked Jesse to do the closing plenary.